You married our son, not our property. The house goes to someone who deserves it. My mother-in-law delivered the words like a verdict, her thin smile cutting across the mahogany conference table. Beside her, my sister-in-law Pauline was already mentally redecorating. I could see it in her eyes. But what none of them knew, what even I didn't fully understand until that moment, was that the dead have a way of protecting the people they loved. And my father-in-law had loved me like his own daughter. Before I tell you what the lawyer revealed, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? And when you hear how this family meeting ended, tell me honestly, do you believe in justice from beyond the grave? My name is Margot. I'm 34 years old, and for the last 8 years, I've been married to the kindest man I've ever known. His name is William, and from the moment I met him, I understood that he was nothing like the family he came from. The Harrington family had money. Old money. The kind that came with a historic home in Savannah, Georgia, complete with wraparound porches, century-old oak trees, and enough family drama to fill a Southern Gothic novel. William's father, Edward, had inherited the estate from his parents, and everyone assumed it would pass to his children when the time came. Everyone except his wife, Gloria. Gloria Harrington was the kind of woman who smiled with her mouth, but never her eyes. She'd married Edward 40 years ago, when she was a secretary at his law firm, and he was a young attorney with a family fortune. She'd spent 4 decades transforming herself into the perfect society wife, erasing every trace of her humble origins, and resenting anyone who reminded her of where she'd started. I reminded her constantly. I grew up in a trailer park outside of Macon. My mother worked 2 jobs. My father left before I could remember his face. I put myself through nursing school on scholarships and stubborn determination, and I met William when he was admitted to my hospital after a car accident. I was his night nurse for 3 weeks. By the time he was discharged, he had my phone number and I had his heart. Gloria made her disapproval clear from the first family dinner. A nurse, she'd said, letting the word drip with condescension. How practical. William's sister Pauline was worse. 2 years younger than William, she'd never worked a day in her life. She'd married and divorced twice, each time walking away with enough alimony to fund her shopping addiction. She lived in a condo their parents paid for, drove a car their parents leased, and somehow still managed to look at me like I was the gold digger. She's after the house, Pauline told Gloria within my hearing at our wedding reception. Mark my words. Trailer trash always wants what they can't have. I didn't want their house. I wanted their son. But explaining that to people who measured everything in property values was pointless. The only Harrington who saw me clearly was Edward. My father-in-law was a quiet man, the opposite of his sharp-tongued wife. He'd built his law practice on integrity, not flash, and he'd raised William with the same values. From the beginning, Edward treated me like family. Real family. He asked about my patients. He remembered my mother's birthday. When Gloria made her cutting remarks, I'd catch him wincing, and later he'd find me alone and apologize for his wife's behavior. She wasn't always like this, he told me once, sadness heavy in his voice. Money changed her. Or maybe it just revealed who she always was. 3 years into my marriage, Edward was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's. Gloria immediately began what she called estate planning, which mostly meant ensuring everything would flow to her and Pauline when the time came. William was written off as a lost cause, contaminated by his choice of wife. But here's what Gloria didn't know. During his lucid periods, Edward would call me. Just to talk. Just to hear a voice that didn't want anything from him. I'd visit him at the memory care facility on my days off, sitting with him for hours while Gloria was at her charity luncheons and Pauline was spending his money. You're good for my son, Edward told me during one of his clear moments, about 6 months before he passed. You remind him that character matters more than inheritance. He gripped my hand with surprising strength. I wish I'd married someone like you, Margot. Someone real. I cried the whole drive home. Edward died on a Tuesday in March. Peaceful, the hospice nurse said. He'd been asking for William and me the night before, but Gloria hadn't bothered to call us until it was over. He wasn't himself anyway, she said dismissively when I confronted her. He probably didn't even know who you were. The funeral was a society event. Gloria wore a designer black dress and accepted condolences like a queen receiving tributes. Pauline was already asking about the will before the reception ended. 2 weeks later, we were all summoned to the law office of Edward's oldest friend and attorney, a man named Harrison Burke. Gloria strode in like she owned the place. Pauline was practically vibrating with anticipation. William and I sat quietly, holding hands, still grieving while everyone else counted coins. Before we begin the formal reading, Harrison said, adjusting his glasses, I need to address some questions about the estate's primary asset, the family home on Whitaker Street. Gloria smiled tightly. There's no question about the house, Harrison. Edward and I discussed it extensively. It stays in the family, naturally. I'll continue living there, and eventually it will pass to Pauline. She's the one who's remained close. She's the one who deserves it. She shot a pointed look at William. Unlike some people who chose to distance themselves. William's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He'd learned long ago that arguing with his mother was like screaming into a hurricane. Mom's right, Pauline chimed in, examining her manicure. I've already spoken with a designer about updating the kitchen. That farmhouse sink has to go. And frankly, the whole east wing needs renovation. She glanced at me with thinly veiled contempt. Not that you would understand, Margot. Coming from a single-wide, interior design probably isn't your strong suit. William's hand found mine under the table. His grip was tight, protective. I squeezed back, silently telling him it was okay. I'd survived worse than Pauline Harrington. Gloria turned back to Harrison. So, let's proceed. Read whatever needs to be read so we can move forward. Harrison cleared his throat. Something in his expression made me sit up straighter. Actually, there's been a transfer you're not aware of. Gloria's smile flickered. Excuse me? The property on Whitaker Street. Harrison pulled a document from his folder. Edward transferred the deed 18 months ago, during one of his documented lucid periods, with 2 physicians present to verify his mental capacity. It was done legally, properly, and irreversibly. Pauline's face went pale. Transferred? Transferred to whom? Harrison looked directly at me. To Margot Harrington. The room exploded. Gloria shot to her feet. That's impossible. Edward would never. He couldn't, she manipulated him. I can assure you, he was of sound mind, Harrison said calmly. I was present for the signing. So were Dr. Patterson and Dr. Reeves from Savannah Memorial. Edward was quite clear about his wishes. His wishes? Pauline shrieked. His wishes were for the house to stay in the family. She's not even. She's married to his son, Harrison interrupted quietly. She is family. And according to Edward, she was the only family member who visited him regularly during his illness. The only one who sat with him. The only one who treated him like a person instead of a problem to be managed until the inheritance came through. Gloria's face was purple. This is fraud. We'll contest it. No court in Georgia will allow. Contest all you like. Harrison slid another document across the table. But Edward anticipated that. He also left a video deposition explaining his reasoning. Would you like to see it? Without waiting for an answer, Harrison pressed play on his laptop. Edward's face filled the screen. He looked frail but alert, his eyes sharp with the clarity that came and went unpredictably near the end. If you're watching this, I'm gone, and my wife is probably threatening to sue. He smiled sadly. Gloria, I loved you once. Maybe I still do, somewhere underneath the disappointment. But you've spent our entire marriage trying to become something you're not, and in the process, you forgot how to be kind. Gloria's hand flew to her mouth. Pauline. Edward's gaze hardened. You're my daughter, and I take responsibility for how you turned out. I gave you too much and asked too little. You've never worked for anything, and it shows in how you treat people who have. Margot came from nothing and built herself into something. You were given everything and squandered it. Pauline was crying now, ugly sobs that smeared her mascara. William. Edward's voice softened. You married well, son. Not because of money or status, but because you found someone who sees you. Hold on to her. And Margot. His eyes seemed to look directly at me through the screen. The house is yours because you earned it. Not by scheming or manipulating, but by showing up. By caring. By treating a confused old man like he still mattered. Tears were streaming down my face. William had his arm around me, his own eyes wet. Do what you want with the property, Edward continued. Live in it. Sell it. Burn it to the ground. It's yours. But know that I gave it to you because you reminded me of who I used to be, before the money made us all forget what matters. The video ended. Silence filled the conference room. Gloria sat motionless, staring at the blank screen. Pauline was still sobbing. Harrison quietly gathered his papers. The rest of the estate, he said softly, is divided according to the original will. Gloria receives the investment accounts and the beach property. Pauline receives her trust fund. William receives the vintage car collection and his father's law library. He looked at me. But the Whitaker Street house belongs solely to Margot Jean Harrington. Free and clear. Gloria finally found her voice. It came out broken, nothing like the polished socialite who'd walked in an hour ago. I dedicated my life to that family. 40 years. And he gave our home to an outsider. You dedicated your life to appearances, William said quietly. It was the first time he'd spoken to his mother directly in months. Dad knew the difference. Even when his mind was failing, he knew. I stood up slowly. My legs were shaking, but my voice was steady. Gloria. Pauline. I know you hate me. You've made that clear since the day I showed up in your lives. And I know you think I manipulated Edward somehow, because that's easier than admitting that maybe you could have visited him too. Maybe you could have sat with him. Maybe you could have treated him like more than a checkbook. I took a breath. I'm not going to sell the house. And I'm not going to keep you from it. Gloria, you can stay as long as you need to find somewhere else. I won't throw you out of your home. I looked at my mother-in-law, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw the scared girl from nothing who'd married into money and spent decades terrified of being exposed. But you should know that Edward didn't give me that house to punish you. He gave it to me because he trusted me to do what's right with it. And what's that? Pauline spat, her voice ragged. Turn it into something that matters. Edward told me once that the house felt empty after you kids grew up. Too big for two people, he said. Too many rooms full of nothing but furniture. I squeezed William's hand. We're going to convert the East Wing into a residence for nurses in training. Students who can't afford housing while they finish their certifications. People like I was trying to build something from nothing. Gloria stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. It'll be called the Edward Harrington House, I continued. His name will mean something. Not because of how much money he had, but because of what his legacy built. The meeting ended shortly after. Gloria left without another word. Pauline stormed out, already on the phone with her own lawyer. Harrison shook my hand with both of his eyes suspiciously bright. He would have loved that, he said quietly. The nursing residence. That's exactly what Edward would have wanted. 6 months later, the Edward Harrington House opened its doors. 12 nursing students moved in that first year, paying minimal rent, focusing on their studies instead of working 3 jobs like I had. Gloria never visited, but I heard through William that she'd started volunteering at the hospital auxiliary. Small steps. Pauline contested the will anyway. She lost. The video deposition played in court, and even the judge wiped his eyes. Last month, I got a letter. No return address, but I recognized Gloria's handwriting from years of receiving icy thank you notes. 3 words. I understand now. I framed it and hung it next to Edward's portrait in the main hallway. Because that's what grace looks like sometimes. Not grand gestures or dramatic apologies. Just 3 words that took 40 years to earn. If you're watching this and you've ever been dismissed by people who thought you weren't enough, I want you to hear something. The ones who see your worth aren't always the ones you expect. Sometimes it's a father-in-law with a fading mind. Sometimes it's a stranger who watches you work and recognizes something familiar. Sometimes it's someone who won't be around to see the impact they've made. But they see you, and their belief leaves a mark that outlasts everything else. Edward Harrington saw me when his own wife refused to look. And because of him, 12 nursing students will graduate this year without the debt I carried for a decade. That's what legacy looks like. Not property. Not money. Not a name on a mailbox. People who remember you showed up. If this story spoke to you, drop a comment below. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next.